Did Yazid really order the killing of Hussein? What happened? Could be called the second fitna, civil strife. Did he really violate the sanctity of Medina? This is one of the mysteries that the reader of history does not know for sure. What was Ubayd al ibn Ziyad's reaction when he heard him say this? Read. The truth is that the Battle of Al-Harar is the biggest black mark in the reign of Yazid. The curtains of the Kharbar court fire. We're about to delve into another tragedy, the tragedy of what happened at the Kharbar. There's been much talk about his disbelief, much talk about his immorality, much talk about the obligation to love him, and so on. If you're trying to understand his mindset, imagine someone who saw that cruelty was what dismantled this entire gathering with minimal losses. What should we do? Should we curse and condemn Yazid, or should we remain silent? Or should we pray for mercy for him? What should we do? A sunny school of thought is that we neither love nor curse Yazid, and we believe that God will forgive him. We've told the story here. Now we want to learn from what happened so we don't repeat the same mistakes. The key is to hold fast to the unity of this Islamic nation and its unity under one leader. Yes, we want to learn. We want to learn from what happened. Yes, we won't find among the rulers anyone like Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali. Music. Peace be upon you, my brothers, wherever you are. Welcome to a new episode of the 100 Questions in History series. This series reminds you that through it we will answer the pressing questions that have arisen in the vast and expansive world of our rich Islamic history, which we always cherish. I remind you that we are in the fifth axis, the axis of the Umayyad state, and we stopped in the previous episode at question 44, which is a very important question. We always welcome Professor Muhammad Al-Harmi in this series. Welcome, Professor Muhammad, may God bless you. We have reached a very important question, indeed a very sensitive one, a very sensitive stage. I will present it to you, but I would like your permission and the permission of the viewers, because, as you know, when we entered the axis of the Caliphate, it is quite natural that as you proceed, we discuss Abu Bakr, may God be pleased with him, Umar, may God be pleased with him, Uthman, and then the rebellions that occurred against Uthman, and after that, Ali, and then the events of the fitna. Professor Muhammad, many comments were written, and the truth is I wanted to say, my brothers and sisters, wherever you are, I noticed from some of the comments that there is a strange insistence on remaining within the circles of historical narrative. The phenomenon doesn't want to move with us through this blessed and auspicious series to its core, to examine and investigate it more closely, as Ibn Khaldun said. So come, my brothers and sisters, let's move from a low level of engagement with history to a higher, more elevated, and more beneficial level. We don't study history to dwell on specific events to prove who was right or wrong, thus increasing our division and discord. For example, we don't study history to prove that I should hate you or love you. We don't study it to prove to you that history aligns with your arguments, simply to establish the truth of what you say. We study history to understand, to learn lessons, to know how we arrived at our current reality, so that we can move forward. Therefore, as you'll notice in this series, we are careful at the end of each question to summarize, or in other words, to convey the message. We present the message, especially for critical or controversial questions, for no other reason than that. Of course, we don't want to dwell on the news just for the sake of dwelling on it. Therefore, today in question 44, we are also facing a thorny issue. Professor Muhammad and I were just talking a few seconds ago about how we started to move away from any events that don't contain prophetic hadiths. We started to move away from the companions a little. I mean, now, God willing, Professor Muhammad will comment on it for us. The people in this story, my brothers, that we want to died. So, is there a religious text that says we worship by insulting or cursing them? For example, my brothers, failing to understand history has a harsh, very harsh price because our understanding of history determines how we manage the present and build the future. History is there. It is in our hands. We are the ones who choose. Do we understand it as an inspiration and a teacher, or as a misleader and a distractor, with the eye of one who seeks fault and error, or with the eye of one who seeks lessons? We are the ones who decide. So, in His Almighty's saying, there was certainly in their stories a lesson, to whom, for those of understanding, it is not a fabricated hadith, but a confirmation of what came before it and a detailed explanation of everything, and a guidance and mercy for whom, for those who believe. I hope, my brothers, that you will receive the discussion about our history from the perspective of someone seeking the path to the nation's revival, not someone searching for errors to prove them. Otherwise, there is no benefit in studying history. So, in the comments, my brothers, wherever you are, whenever you feel like commenting and writing, write something useful. For example, we made the episode and we worked hard, so may God reward you. Open up a new lesson for us, a feature that was missing. May God reward you. I don't want to go on any longer. I know you like presenters to go on longer in podcasts. Welcome, Professor Muhammad, once again. I know if you have a comment before I ask you the question, that would be good. I appreciate in the name of God, and praise be to God, and peace and blessings be upon the messenger of God, his family and companions. I certainly appreciate your words and agree with them. I want to say that history, like other sciences, has easy and simple aspects and difficult and complex aspects. Likewise, the history that was and is past is a reflection of the reality we live in. Surely all viewers know that there are complex matters that cannot be resolved through mere opinion. If we were to put each viewer in the position of head of state, they would undoubtedly encounter such complexity in the situation and the choices that it would compel them to reason. Things are not black and white, not right and wrong. Matters are ambiguous and confusing. Someone forced to err might strive to do so, intending to be right but failing. Or they might err because they are compelled to do so, or because their efforts were in vain, and they were apprehensive about many things. The point is, there are complex matters. What we seek now is to understand history in order to understand the present, while emphasizing that it is history, our history as a Muslim nation, the best of all histories. For God said, "You are the best nation produced for mankind." And while emphasizing that the history of Muslims is not a history of angels, but rather one filled with wars, conspiracies, bloodshed, and problems, we need to read and understand this history so that it refines and deepens our understanding of the reality we live in. Yes, so that we may be more justified and better equipped to address these issues. Excuses, and that is why they said, whoever makes a promise to history in his heart adds lifetimes to his life, because the scene you see before you has been repeated to you, and so on. So I ask God for guidance and success for us, for you, and for all viewers. May God reward you. Professor Muhammad. Question 44. God is the one from whom help is sought. He says, of course, during the era of Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah, 3 very important, very serious, and very dangerous events occurred that still pain Muslims wherever they are: the killing of al-Hussein, may God be pleased with him, the invasion of Medina, and the siege of Mecca. So the question is, first of all, before anything else, did Yazid really do all of this or not? Did Yazid really order the killing of al-Hussein, meaning the order came from him personally? And did he really permit the invasion of Medina and the siege of Mecca? Did all of this happen or not? This statement contains a contradiction. Someone might say, by the way, you've forgotten a hadith that says the first army to conquer Constantinople was forgiven, and at the head of that army was Yazid. Yes, it was Yazid. So, Professor Muhammad, there's been a lot of talk about his alleged disbelief. Some people do declare him an unbeliever. There's also a lot of talk about More importantly, what do we learn from this, please, in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. Praise be to God, and peace and blessings be upon the messenger of God. My Lord, expand my breast for me and ease my task for me and untie the knot from my tongue that they may understand my speech. Okay, look, sir, the era of Yazid. Yazid ruled for 3 years, a pivotal period in Islamic history. This is one of the periods where I want to emphasize some fundamental principles. This is about Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah. If we weren't Muslims and we're dealing with history, whether it's the way politicians or the way people treat each other, I'm emphasizing that we should put the word Muslims aside for now. Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah did nothing to be condemned for. I mean, if we take Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah from the history of Muslims and put him in the history of any other nation, this man is one of the great figures of that nation, and this man did nothing to be punished or blamed for. Even if we say that he drank alcohol, what's the problem? I mean, I'm saying now, we're going to bring up our moral sensitivities as Muslims. Okay, he drank alcohol, what's the problem? Not all kings have problems, sins, especially since he did not openly admit to them. I mean, he drinks alcohol, he loves hunting. What's the problem with him loving hunting? This man invaded the city, yes, but why did he invade the city? Because the people of Medina revolted against him, and he tried to resolve it peacefully, but when he couldn't, he sent an army and conquered it. Has any king in history ever faced a revolt in a city and simply let it go? Same applies to his sending an army to Mecca because there was a rebel there named Abdullah ibn al-Zubayr. The same applies to al-Hussein. Al-Hussein was someone who rebelled against him and wanted to stage a revolt in a city called Kufr. If we remove Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah from Islamic history and from the basic moral values of Muslims, Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah didn't do anything blameworthy in the history of any nation. The most important thing is understanding the nature of governance. Yes, understanding the nature of governance. And I return to the saying, if Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah had lived for 2, 3, or 4 centuries, no one would have cared much. I mean, if the enemies of al-Hussein and those whom al-Hussein confronted hadn't been al-Hussein, and if there hadn't been Abdullah ibn al-Zubayr, and if there hadn't been Abdullah ibn Hanzar al-Ghassil, if it weren't for those countries, what would things have been like? They would have been normal. Even among Muslims, they would have seen him as a king, like the other kings who ruled Islamic history. They would have even celebrated his achievements as the first to conquer Constantinople. Constantinople now means the White House, my friend. It's a big story, of course. If I wanted to make it clearer, let me give you an example. As an Egyptian, I'll give you an Egyptian example. Now, if we imagine that Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, after everything he's done in Egypt, built a strong state and established a strong army and then went and besieged the White House, I assure you that 99% of Egyptians, including those killed, and the children of those killed in his quarter and elsewhere, would forgive him. They would forgive him for this and see that he did all that to establish a strong state and a strong army, and that Muslims in his era would not hesitate to conquer the White House. So, the real problem, or rather, I don't want to call it a problem, I say, truthfully, our disagreement regarding Yazid isn't merely about his political actions, but rather about our moral sensitivities as Muslims. This is something that falls under the category of our
ويحاكموه يختلف فيه كافر ولا مسلم نسبه ولا نلعنه ولا
virtues as Muslims. When they evaluate their history, if a man achieves great accomplishments, and he assaulted a companion of the Prophet, or a follower of the companions, or conquered Medina or Mecca, they don't bring him down from his lofty position and put him on trial. They don't debate whether he's an infidel or a Muslim, whether to attribute him to God or to curse him. This isn't one of the virtues of Muslims in reading history. No nation brings down Genghis Khan, even though he razed the land and crushed it, he is still revered. His people, and so on, meaning every nation. Yes, its leaders committed massacres, they invaded cities, and no one from that nation sees this as a problem. Of course, they had concubines, they had whims, they drank alcohol, and no one sees this as a problem either. So, I must put the matter in its context. We Muslims have a very high and very sensitive moral standard. So, the great figures in all of our Islamic history, we have brought them down because of personal sins sometimes, or because of their political problems. But, well, this is one of the virtues of Muslims. This is number one. And number two, you alluded to it briefly. The Prophet, may God bless him and grant him peace, said, "The first army of my nation to conquer Constantinople will be forgiven." As for me, the first time I heard this hadith, I remember that I was sitting like this, then I stood up because of my great amazement at the precision of the Prophet's words, may God bless him and grant him peace. He said, forgiven. What does forgiven mean? It means they committed sins, they committed calamities, they caused troubles. The word forgiven means, you see, in his first hadith about the people who raided the sea, he said, they have earned paradise for themselves, meaning they have earned paradise for themselves through their jihad. This is absolute praise. But here, forgiven them indicates that they commit sins. In fact, I say that the Prophet's choice of the word forgiven them is evidence that these sins are major sins. Otherwise, he would have said, they have earned paradise, or he would have said, they have entered paradise. But he chose the lesser wording, which is the verse forgiven them, from which we understand that they have troubles and problems. There is ambiguity in the matter. So, on the other hand, some people mention this so that we can disagree about Yazid in the story. This is an authentic hadith, teacher. Yes, in Bukhari. Yes, the second hadith is the hadith of the Prophet. Peace and blessings be upon him, O Allah. Forgive the Ansar, the sons of the Ansar, and the sons of the sons of the Ansar. Well, this may be interpreted, or it should be interpreted, or it should not be taken out of context regarding what happened in the Battle of Al-Harar. We have now the two sides, Yazid and Al-Harar. There are two hadiths in them, and both use the wording of the verse of forgiveness. Yes, but I, right now as I speak to you, and even in this series and in all my work in general, am not interested in defending Yazid. The truth is, I am more important than defending Yazid and the entire, you may add, state. These people are dead in the end, and they won't give us money, meaning we won't benefit from them. What matters to me is that Muslims pay attention to the greatness of their history. That is what is most important to me. Therefore, when I mention this, I am not mentioning it in defense of Yazid now. I am not interested in defending or attacking. I will mention the matter, God willing, and tell the story. I am interested in Muslims being aware that their moral sensitivity and ethical standards are what make them superior to other nations. When our great scholars and our great ancestors said they differed about Yazid, whether to love him, insult him, curse him, or whether it was permissible, it was all based on the ethical foundation that distinguishes us from all other nations. That's good. Okay, let's go back to the fact that we are Muslims in the past. Professor Muhammad, you started your speech with the word if, and I remind you of it, young people. If we were to strip it out, and you, Professor Muhammad, are trying to tell us how to evaluate history, how to read it, how to understand it, yes, away from emotions. And you added to this a great, neat and sweet crown, which is how Islam gave us the authority to judge everyone and evaluate everyone, and this is an authority that was not granted to any nation throughout history. Yes, that's why I'm telling you this chapter about evaluating kings by their moral actions, a chapter that all nations have strayed from. It's beautiful that no one but Muslims still evaluates people morally. So, let's say we as Muslims now, wearing our Islamic garb and our Islamic ethics, will tell what happened. What happened can be called the second fitna, the one after the fitna among the companions. This second fitna, of course, this second fitna shows us that what our master Mu'awiyah wanted to avoid and fix through politics happened as he envisioned and hoped, but unfortunately through war, fighting, and bloodshed. To understand this statement, you need to go back to the previous episode. So, what does this mean? It means that our master Muawiyah saw that this nation had new social and political circumstances, and that the Umayyad clan was the strongest. Therefore, appointing his son Yazid as his successor was the safest solution for his nation. So, he appointed his son Yazid. His son Yazid, this he faced these matters, that we will tell, and he died early, no more than 3 years after him. His son, meaning Muawiyah's grandson, Muawiyah bin Yazid bin Muawiyah, died after 3 months, and what Muawiyah wanted was fulfilled, meaning without him achieving what he wanted. So what happened? What happened was that the nation entered into other battles, and the Umayyads were victorious in them. But what happened this time, after we paid with a lot of blood, and after the caliphate was taken by force, and this is what the first one, Abd al-Malik bin Marwan, did. I mean, Abd al-Malik bin Marwan. He was the first one to take the caliphate by force. Yes, we're coming to him. Yes, we'll come to him. But now, I'm telling you, when you want to evaluate Yazid's era, now, you must remember Muawiyah's intelligence, his patience, and his politics. Now suppose that someone is a little lazy and wants to go and see the previous episode like this in one line. What did our master Muawiyah want? Our master Muawiyah saw that the nation could only be reformed now if the current caliph paved the way for the next caliph, and the next caliph. The people could only be reformed if the Umayyads took charge, because they were the strongest clan, and the Umayyads would only accept Yazid. So, our master Muawiyah's goal was to prevent the nation from entering into a new strife, a great story, new battles, and new massacres. Exactly, yes, exactly. Now, Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah, I mean, he was born during the time of Uthman ibn Affan, and his mother was a Bedouin, an Arab Bedouin named Mason bint Bardal al-Talbiyar from the Barnu Kalb tribe. Okay, let me soften the scene for you a little. Those who study literature memorize poetry by Mason bint Bardal. Muawiyah married her to gain favor with her tribe and brought her to live in Damascus, in the caliph's house. Something like that. So, she didn't like this arrangement. She loved the desert. That's why it's famous among literary people to say a house where souls flutter, a house where the winds come and go, that is dearer to me than a lofty palace. Oh, how wonderful! And a dog barking at the caravans, that dog howling in the desert, that is dearer to me than a loyal mule. And wearing a cloak and being content is dearer to me than wearing fine silk. And eating a piece of bread in my own home is dearer to me than eating a loaf. The simplicity of my life in the desert is sweeter to my heart than a luxurious life. Return me to the desert and free me. Oh, so Muawiyah divorced her, and it is said that he divorced her while she was pregnant with Yazid. So, the important thing is that Yazid grew up in the desert. So he grew up in the manner of the Bedouin people. He was eloquent and a powerful, accomplished poet. He was tall and stout, meaning he had a wall-like personality. And when he grew up, Muawiyah summoned him. And Muawiyah had a son older than Yazid, by the way, named Abdullah. So, even Muawiyah turned away the caliphate from Abdullah, his eldest son, to Yazid, which is evidence that he wanted the good of the nation. It was not just a lust for power. He saw that he was fit for the caliphate and led the army to Constantinople. No one challenged his leadership. The important thing is that Yazid died. Now, we said that there were only 4 people who disagreed with the succession. One of them was Abdullah ibn Umar. His issue was procedural. He wouldn't pledge allegiance to 2 caliphs. If the first died, he would pledge allegiance to the second. And indeed, Abdullah ibn Umar pledged allegiance to Abd al-Rahman ibn Abi Bakr, who died before Muawiyah. As we said, only Ibn al-Zubayr and al-Hussein remained.
ليزيد. يزيد كان
Keen on their pledge specifically
لأنهما
because they were the two strongest figures among the opposition. There were no other opponents, but these two were the most powerful figures. Their refusal to pledge allegiance could incite
يتسبب تخلفهما عن البيعة في
others to break this pledge, especially
هذه البيعة. بالذات الحسين
Al-Hussein, because the people of Kufr still had a leaning towards Ali ibn Abi Talib, may God be pleased with him, and his lineage, and were it not for Al-Hassan, the people of Kufr would not have reconciled. So, what does it mean that Al-Hussein's situation is dangerous for Yazid now as a politician? Abdullah ibn al-Zubair is in a different position, the second position. So, what happened now is that neither of them pledged allegiance, and when the governor of Medina asked them to pledge allegiance, they made excuses, meaning they delayed pledging allegiance. Yes, and they left Mecca and left Medina for Mecca, so that if they stayed in Mecca,
بقوا في مكة
then I mean, Mecca is sacred and they would be
ويعني سيكونون
far from the governor's demand for their
بعيدهما بالبيعة.
allegiance. Okay, so here a difference of
حصل اختلاف في الموقف.
opinion occurred. Al-Hussein began to write to the people of Kufr saying, "We are your shir and your supporters. Come to us, and we will pledge allegiance to you as caliph." So, Al-Hussein saw that there was an opportunity to demand and call for the caliphate for himself, and Al-Hussein, naturally,
بطبيعة الحال
saw himself as more deserving of the caliphate than Yazid. There is no question about that. I mean, Al-Hussein is a companion. Al-Hussein ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib ibn Fatima, the daughter of the Messenger of God, may God bless him and grant him peace, and he is older than Yazid in age. I mean, the difference there are perhaps 25 or 30 years between them. Yes, meaning our master Al-Hussein is older. Of course, our master, meaning our master Al-Hussein, is the head of the Banu Hashim, meaning the head of those who remained of the Banu Hashim. Of course, if we overlook Abdullah bin Abbas, who is not actually withdrawn, meaning he does not enter into the conflicts and sees himself as worthy of that, well, he sees himself as worthy of that. Likewise, Kufr exists, and its people see that they want Al-Hussein to come and approach them. Professor Muhammad, the people of Kufr. So how did they know that our master Al-Hussein moved from Medina to Mecca and decided to correspond with him? Did they know of his desire for the caliphate? Yes, of course. The narrations state that communication between the people of Kufr and Al-Hussein was never completely severed, even while he was in Medina, even during the time of Mu'awiyah. This means, of course, that there are narrations that prove this, that it was not hidden from Mu'awiyah. Mu'awiyah knew that both Al-Hussein and Abdullah ibn al-Zubair considered themselves worthy of the caliphate and that they would be a danger to his son, Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah. Therefore, Mu'awiyah honored them greatly, more than others, trying to favor them or overcome these obstacles. He even asked for his son, Abdullah ibn al-Zubair, to be Yazid's wife, but Abdullah ibn al-Zubair refused. Yes, and Mu'awiyah's will to his son Yazid on his deathbed was that he should pay attention to these two figures specifically, and that he should give them whatever they wanted, and that even if he fought them and then they surrendered to him, he should accept their surrender. He should not let them remain in trouble. This was clear to Mu'awiyah, and it was also clear as well in Yazid's politics. There are also accounts mentioning that Mu'awiyah was speaking to Abdullah ibn al-Zubair, warning him, saying, "I see your greed and avarice will lead you into a difficult situation." Of course, these matters are not hidden from politicians, so how much more so from Mu'awiyah, who was at the forefront of politics. And yes, of course. Anyway, now we have 3 scenarios, which will be as follows. I don't want to skip this part in answering this question. These 3 scenarios are as follows. Hussein ibn Ali found an opportunity after the death of Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah. He saw himself as more deserving of the caliphate and found supporters in Kufr. These supporters in Kufr sent him many
بعد وفاة معاوية طبعا.
followers and his supporters. Here, it happened that most of the companions did not advise Husayn against going to the people of Kufr, and the most prominent among them were the senior companions at that time Abdullah ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Abbas, and Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah, who is the brother of al-Husayn. Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah is Muhammad ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib, but his mother was from the Banu Hanifa tribe. Therefore, he became known as Muhammad ibn Hanifa to distinguish him from the descendants of Fatima. Muhammad ibn Hanifa, Jabir ibn Abdullah, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, and the rest of the companions advised al-Husayn against going out. Of course, the reasons for their advice were different. Some advised him not to go out because the nation had already united behind Yazid, and his going out would cause division. Others advised him not to go to Iraq, reminding him of the experience of Ali and al-Hassan in Iraq, where Ali was killed and al-Hassan was stabbed and nearly killed. Ultimately, the people of Iraq at that time could not be relied upon to instigate this great rebellion. For example, Ibn Abbas suggested he go to Yemen instead of Iraq, but Yemen was farther away and not an easy land like Iraq. It was a land full of mountains, caves, and caverns. However, our master al-Husayn believed that the people of Kufr were sincere, and to be sure his cousin, Muslim ibn Aqil, was sent by Ibn Abi Talib to the people of Kufr. Ibn Abbas told him, "Look, if you were going to Kufr now, and they have rebelled and deposed their governor, then fine, there would be some truth to it and the ground would be prepared. But you are going to Kufr, and the people are still under the authority of their governor, and he is still collecting money from them. What is it? Zakat, tithes, or land tax? I mean, the authority is still there, so it's not appropriate." Abdullah ibn Umar, when he refused al-Husayn, may God be pleased with him, said, "I entrust you to God, you who are going to be killed," meaning, I know that you are going to die, God willing, without going into details. And of course, it was a tragic event. The reader still weeps for it even now, feeling the pain of al-Husayn's martyrdom. But the matter here is as follows: Yazid exerted his efforts to get the governor of Medina to pledge allegiance to al-Husayn, and he exerted his efforts to get the governor of Mecca to do the same. And he sent to the governor of Iraq, who was al-Nu'man ibn Bashir, and al-Nu'man ibn I forgot his name, I forgot it. The governor of Iraq was al-Nu'man al-Bashir. This is in another stage. Anyway, when he saw that he was the governor of Iraq, meaning he was somewhat conciliatory, he brought the governor of Basra, Ubayd Allah ibn Ziyad, to appoint him over Kufr. Now, the scene was that al-Husayn was going to Kufr, and Kufr would rebel. Ubayd Allah ibn Ziyad was a very harsh and also very intelligent character, which we cannot deny. Anyway, Ubayd Allah ibn Ziyad secured Kufr and put in place a security plan there. What do you mean by a security plan? It's like saying it's impenetrable, or in Egyptian terms, it's like saying it's watertight. He went there and secured Kufr completely and began searching for Muslim ibn Aqil, who was in one of the houses in Kufr, to take the pledge of allegiance to al-Husayn, but he couldn't find him. So what did he do? First, he entered Kufr disguised to see how the people would receive a disguised person. The people were saying, "Welcome, O son of the daughter of the messenger of God, welcome." So he knew that Kufr was ready to receive him. Al-Husayn, then, when he couldn't reach Muslim ibn Aqil, sent a man from Syria to the people of Kufr. This man, pretending to be from Syria, was carrying money and wanted to pledge allegiance to al-Husayn. This man managed to reach Muslim ibn Aqil, discovered his location, and arrested him. He then deployed his police outside Kufr, effectively sealing it off. No one could leave anyone coming to Kufr fell into the hands of Ubayd ibn Ziyad's police. Therefore, al-Hussein sent two messengers to get news. Both were arrested and killed. There was no further news. Throughout his journey from Mecca to Kufr, al-Hussein saw advisors, the most famous of whom was al-Farazdak. You know al-Farazdak, a great poet. He uttered his famous phrase, "Their hearts are with you, but their swords are against you." In short, Ubayd ibn Ziyad managed to tighten his grip on Kufr, dismantling the group that had formed around Muslim ibn Aqil. He was able to believe that Muslim ibn Aqil was safe. He kills him, and he kills Hani bin Awar, the tribal leader who had a Muslim with him, in his house. He is now coming with a security plan, meaning, by the way, and of course, Ubayd bin Ziyad went too far in his plan, more than what Yazid told him. Yazid, meaning Yazid bin Mu'awiyah, tells him, "Hussein will come to you, so accept anything from him, whether he goes out or returns or comes to me," meaning accept anything from him, as long as he does. And do the verse. He didn't work, he didn't reach the supporters, and his supporters didn't form a block except for Ubayd ibn Ziyad, as you see in many heads of security agencies, governors, or others who are more royalist than the king. So his plan was a plan of complete suppression. Well, this plan of complete suppression succeeded in dismantling the bloc that wanted to pledge allegiance to Hussein, and that Hussein's head was on the day of the great call to Hussein, Muslim ibn Aqil and Han ibn Awar, and that Hussein became unaware of what was happening in Kufr, and that as soon as Hussein approached Kufr, he found an army on the outskirts of Kufr that controlled his movement under the leadership of someone named al-Hur ibn Yazid al-Amili. So practically Hussein found himself finished. His power was gone. So Hussein offered a show of force. Well, I didn't even come to Kufr. So now Hussein is theoretically or legally innocent because he didn't pledge allegiance to Yazid. Here again, excuse me, let me open a small parenthesis. Now, for example, the established practice in our time is that there are elections, and these elections, if the president won with 51%, so the remaining 49% are obligated to accept the opinion of the 51%, and those who disagrees are considered outsiders. About the law, yes, this kind of torque didn't exist in the past. In every era, everyone pledges allegiance themselves. If he does not pledge allegiance himself, he is not obligated to pledge allegiance to others. Okay, al-Hussein has not yet pledged allegiance, and he has come to Kufr with messengers, and the people of Kufr have invited him. Legally speaking, according to the understanding of that time, what did he commit? He did not commit a sin or transgression. No, he pledged allegiance and then broke his promise. He didn't come to this place as an enemy, evader, or fighter, but rather at the request of its people. Now that what happened has happened, well, we have three options. I can return to where I came from. I can go to the border regions, the places of jihad, or take me to Yazid and I will deal with Yazid. There was a choice to take me to Yazid. Take me to Yazid, okay? But Ubayd ibn Ziyad had someone in his entourage named Shimr ibn Dhi al-Joshan. Yes, I heard about him. Yes, this is someone who said, no, he's the one who made all this up. We will not accept anything from him unless he comes down, meaning he pledges allegiance as a servant of Ibn Ziyad, meaning a slave of Ibn Ziyad, or in the hands of Ibn Ziyad, or under the rule of Ibn Ziyad. Of course, Ibn Ziyad, I mean, what do I want to tell you? Look at al-Hussein, the leader of the Muslims, the grandson of the Prophet, and I'm speaking to you now. He was 60 years old, and this is a young man, and his father was affiliated with the Umayyads. This is a position that no free man would accept. So how could the grandson of the Prophet accept? This obstinacy is also what sparked the final battle, in which Shimr ibn Dhi al-Joshan himself came to lead the army, that the one who led the detachment the opinion of Ubayd ibn Ziyad to kill al-Hussein, and it is attributed to him that he also killed al-Hussein and cut off his head with his hand, is Shimr ibn Zaljusher. So when Ubayd ibn Ziyad heard him saying this, what was his position? Okay, what he agreed to now? Yes, of course. He's the one who followed his advice. Look at Ubayd ibn Ziyad. As I told you, he was a person, if you're trying to understand his mindset, who saw that harshness was what would dismantle this entire gathering with minimal losses and that it would bring order to the state. He was the one who would control the state and prevent people from being oppressed, arrogant, and tyrannical. There's no doubt about that. Hussein offered to return or to go to the borders or to be taken to Yazid. This was an offer that anyone could accept, even Umar ibn Sard ibn Abi Waqqas, the commander of the army that went out to confront Yazid. When he heard this, sent word to Ubayd ibn Ziyad, saying, "The problem is over. Why should we fight Hussein anymore?" Even Her ibn Yazid al-Amili, who left Kufr to guide Hussein's movement, when he saw Ibn Ziyad's obstinacy, joined Hussein and fought with him and was killed alongside him. This moment was so profound that even those who were with Ubayd ibn Ziyad, he went out to control al-Hussein's movement, turning against Ubayd ibn Ziyad and fighting alongside al-Hussein. He killed al-Hur ibn Yazid al-Amili. So, practically speaking, of course, fighting was inevitable, and al-Hussein and his army were destined to be defeated. As a result of this, the wretched Shimr ibn Zayd cut off al-Hussein's head and sent it to Ibn Ziyad. It is narrated in Sahih al-Bukhari that Ibn Ziyad was poking at the part of al-Hussein's head that had been cut off, saying, "How beautiful this is." Arners was telling him, "Lift your stick from the spot where I saw the messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him, kissing it." When the news reached Yazid, he was furious and said, "May God curse Ibn Marjanar. By God, I would have accepted less from al-Hussein than this, or I would have accepted what he said. By God, I did not order his killing, nor did I approve of it." So, the last thing Yazid wanted was to prevent him from entering This story ends without any harm coming to al-Hussein. Even Ubayd ibn Ziyad received messengers from Yazid's governor of Mecca, and Yazid's governor of the city said that al-Hussein, the son of the daughter of the messenger of God, is being presented to you. This is a matter that you must be aware of, and it is a matter that will either free you or lead to your destruction, because the killer of the son of the daughter of the messenger of God will not escape. Indeed, the slaves of al-Zad were later killed and mutilated as well. But the summary now is that this situation now has two problems that we must point out. The first problem is that Yazid bin Mu'awiyah did not punish Ubayd bin Ziyad or Umar bin Sard or those who caused the killing of al-Hussein. That is, he declared that he was not pleased and showed his cursing and insulting of them, but he did not punish them or take revenge on them. This is a defect, a deficiency, and a bad thing in Yazid's view. The second problem is the enormous exaggeration surrounding the killing of Hussein, both in the depiction of his death and the capture of his family's women. There are claims that they were taken on camels without litters, that they were taken like captives, and some even say they were taken naked. All of this is in stark contrast to the sheer volume of sheer exaggerations regarding what happened to Hussein's family, the Prophet's family, peace be upon him, and Hussein's sons. It is established that no Hashemite woman was taken captive. Ibn Taymiyyah states that Muslims never took any Hashemite woman captive. In fact, even Ubayd ibn Ziyad housed Hussein's family and provided for them before they were taken to Yazid. With honor, they stayed with Yazid for a month, and he treated them with respect. Among them was Ali ibn Hussein, known as Zayn al-Abidin. So, this is how Hussein's revolutions ending in this tragedy. Let's consider this scene. As I mentioned, someone who evaluates the issue politically without religious consideration would say a revolution that failed and resulted in killing its leader, yes, and also Yazid and also Ubayd ibn Ziyad did not transgress against his family or his honor or anything, but rather they treated them with respect. The man who is a Muslim now sees that what happened to Hussein was a very heinous injustice. Firstly, this moral sensitivity, if he is not convinced by everything we said regarding the issue of the succession, then he will say this is the first breach, this is the first injustice, this is the first corruption, this is the first deviation, and this is its end, meaning this is the first of the calamities that came from the fact that the caliphate was no longer based on consultation and that the caliphate did not reach its rightful owners. So, if we now adopt the mindset and psychology of a pious Muslim, if he cannot and does not agree with Muawiyah's words and the actions of the companions, he will see this as the first of the verse, the first deviation, and the first deviation is that the matter reached those who were not its rightful owners, and therefore those who were not its rightful owners, which is Yazid, and he entrusted the affairs of the provinces to those who were not its rightful owners, to the cruel, to those who have no religion, like Ubayd ibn Ziyad and like Shimr ibn Dihil-Jorshan, and these are the ones who caused that even Hussein, after he decided to return or that it would end, this revolution did not allow him to be anything but a slave, and it is a humiliating position that the son of the daughter of the messenger of God, may God bless him and grant him peace, would not have been allowed to occupy. Therefore, what happened to al-Hussein is the first of the great calamities after the caliphate was changed from consultation. Yes, very good. A martyrdom of al-Hussein will stir up in the souls that lived during the rightly guided caliphate and were in Mecca and Medina. It will stir up in them all kinds of pain, all kinds of anger, and all kinds of resentment. Who is closer to capture this scene? A second opposition figure in Mecca was Abdullah ibn al-Zubayr. The scene, as seen by the people of Mecca and by Abdullah ibn al-Zubayr himself, was that whoever was not worthy of the title had killed the best of creation, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, the one who fasted, prayed, and worshipped. Therefore, Abdullah ibn al-Zubayr began to renounce his allegiance to Yazid. Of course, he hadn't pledged allegiance to him, but he began calling for the annulment of that allegiance. He himself hadn't pledged allegiance, but he began calling for this annulment of that allegiance. He was in Mecca at the time, and Mecca is a sanctuary, a safe haven, and far from Damascus. To cross from Damascus to Mecca, Mecca is in the southwest of the Arabian Peninsula, as you know from the map. Yes, this means there was a rebellion in Mecca, and the problem that had occurred in Karbala with Hussein had sparked a near revolution in Medina. This revolution was led by two men, one named Abdullah ibn Hanzala ibn Abi Amir. Hanzala ibn Abi Amir was a noble companion of the Prophet. He had just gotten married, and while he and his wife were on their wedding night, when he heard the call to jihad, he rose from his wife's side in a state of ritual impurity junub, without having performed the ritual bath ghusl. He went into battle and was killed. May God have mercy on him. He died in this state of ritual impurity, or was martyred in this state. When the companions came to him, they found him dripping with water. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, "The angels have washed him." So he was called Hanzala, the one washed by the angels. What God wills. Congratulations to him. Congratulations to him. What we are talking about is his son. His son. He was called Abdullah ibn Hanzala, the one washed. Okay, this man was with another man named Abdullah ibn Muti, along with a number of people from Medina and its prominent figures. Okay, let's establish that the actions of al-Hussein, may God be pleased with him, Muti and Abdullah ibn Hanzalar were on a visit to Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah in Damascus. They returned from this visit, and Yazid had honored them, given them gifts, and rewarded them with great wealth and much money. When they returned, the people of Medina asked this delegation about Yazid, and Abdullah ibn Hanzalah said, "By God, I have come to you from a man who, if I had nothing but these children of mine, I would rise up against him." This is after he had honored him. After he had honored him, they said, "He gave you gifts and bestowed favors upon you." He said, "I only accepted them from him so that I could gain power over him. Yes, I only took this money from him so that I could gain power over him." Okay, Sheikh Murad, do you know what Abdullah ibn Hanzalar ibn Abi Amir saw in Yazid? We don't know of any authentic narration that mentions this. This is one of the mysteries that the reader of history still doesn't know for certain. There are weak narrations that say that he drinks intoxicants, so that he delays prayer or even misses it. Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah drinks intoxicants and misses prayer. Well, these weak narrations have no support in the authentic narrations whatsoever. They have no support. But some historians have tried to understand how this idea came about. Okay, so those who they tried hard to understand how this idea came about, they said that, meaning among the people of the Levant, and as was later known about the people of Iraq, there were certain drinks. You know the issue of wine. Among these Iraqis, a well-known issue in Islamic jurisprudence that there was a certain drink called wine. The people of Iraq considered it not to be a forbidden intoxicant, while the scholars of Medina considered it to be a forbidden intoxicant. Are right. So some historians mentioned that some people, meaning the people of the Levant, drank such a drink or something of this drink. The people of Medina considered it intoxicating, but the people of the Levant, because the people of the Levant did not mention that Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah drank wine, and Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah had in his entourage even some of the companions and followers, and they did not mention that he drank wine, and the issue of him abandoning prayer. If this were true, or if it were widespread, the first to know about it would have been the people of the Levant, and they would have narrated it. Well, even those who rebelled against Yazid, Abdullah ibn Muti and Abdullah ibn Hanzar al-Ghassil, when they mentioned that he drank wine, the companions in Medina, including Ali ibn al-Hussein, said, "I did not see him. He did that, and he accompanied him because he stayed with him for about a month in Damascus." Yazid would not eat his food unless he summoned Ali ibn al-Hussein. He said, "Your father broke his covenant with you, and he broke my covenant with you, but I didn't like this," and there were conversations between them to this effect, which I won't elaborate on now. Yes, well, regarding the issue of prayer, the narrations prove that Yazid was suffering from gout at that time, so he couldn't, even when he received the delegation from Medina, he would stretch out his legs and cover them. Yes, he couldn't, and he said, "I feel that if a fly lands, it's as if a rock has landed on it." Some of those present wanted to test this, so he leaned on his leg without intending to, and he felt pain in his face to see if he was being truthful about this, or if he was too proud to receive them and stand up for them. Another narration also mentions that the news reached Yazid while he had his feet in the water, so it is very possible that his failure to stand up for the congregational prayer was due to this, which made some people think that he was delaying the prayer. And I also say This is based on the understanding of researchers and historians of this period, but it doesn't mean it's ever proven through a sound chain of transmission that he drank alcohol or that he neglected them. Did you see so-and-so drinking alcohol? Did you see so-and-so? You are complicit. You saw him. And if you didn't see him, how can you testify to something you didn't see? As for Abdullah ibn Hanzalar, was he a companion? Yes, he wasn't a companion, most likely as far as I know. But Abdullah ibn Muti ibn Hajar said, he had a vision. He had a vision, meaning he saw the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, the person I'm asking about, because we, Muslims, if the people of Syria who is also our master, who is also Yazid, were surrounded by people, let's talk about the sincere ones who might not even be fair in evaluating his history. Without me having to say more, did the scholars also write about Abdullah ibn Hanzalar al-Ghassil? Of course, do we know about him? I mean, if he was a person, for example among the pious and pure ones, if he saw something wrong, he would find that the problem lies in the weak narration attributed to him. The correct narration is the ambiguous statement, the one you don't know the details of, which is when he said, I have come to you from a man who, if I had nothing but these children of mine, I would fight them, or I would fight him with them. This is something that shouldn't be mentioned unless there is a calamity, a major issue. So what happened to him? Did he see something truly reprehensible, or was it Abdullah ibn Muti's sensitivity that this man was not like the rightly guided caliphs, because this man was from Medina, living in the stronghold of faith and piety, the land of the rightly guided caliphs? So, when he saw him, he saw that he was not worthy of the caliphate in the presence of the leading figures of the Muhajirin and Ansar. Did he see that he was not entitled to the caliphate? Did he see a truly great sin? Or did he see that Yazid's level of piety was not the level that would make him a caliph over a people among whom were such prominent figures? And of course, he is comparing. He was also with Al-Hussein, and therefore this comparison is valid. Compare him to Abdullah bin Umar, meaning in Medina, Abdullah bin Umar was one of the companions of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. So, his visit to Syria was before or after the killing of Al-Hussein? No, after the killing of Al-Hussein. Yes, all of this was happening secretly, intensely. Yes, he was acting secretly until he returned from Yazid. And then, he even tells you that he harbored the intention that he only took the money given to him to strengthen himself against him. So, my point is, while he was there, what does that mean? He intended to go out. Well, the important thing, sir, is that this led to Abdullah bin Hanzalar and Ibn Muti mobilizing the people of Medina to fight with him. This battle, or this rebellion, or this revolution, was also rejected by the rest of the companions, and the most famous of those who rejected it was Abdullah bin Umar. In fact, Abdullah bin Umar called it treachery, and he said that he went to Abdullah bin Muti and told him, I heard the messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him, say that a banner will be raised for every traitor on the day of resurrection, according to his treachery, and we have pledged allegiance to this man. But he was not satisfied with that. Rather, Abdullah ibn Umar returned to his family and said, we have pledged allegiance to this man, and I don't know of anyone among you who has broken his pledge and joined what these people have joined. If anyone does, it will be the deciding factor between me and him. Among those who rejected this was Ibn Abbas, and among those who rejected it was Ali ibn al-Hussein. Hussein himself rejected this revolution. I mean, the people of Medina didn't have a consensus on it. Rather, their elders were against it. But the important thing is that the people of Medina, they rallied behind these two men. The news reached Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah. Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah, of course, felt betrayed that the man he had honored and given so much was now inciting rebellion or revolution against him. Therefore, his anger reached its peak. He saw that all his dreams, what are you doing? Now, if you put yourself in Yazid's place and keep recalling the events, and of course, when the people of Medina revolted, they besieged the Umayyads in Medina and then expelled them. what was a fault of those Umayyads in Medina? So, you have a problem with Yazid. I mean, of course, the others, or the revolutionaries, see that the Bani the Umayyads will be the eyes of Yazid and will be like a fifth column. History, he looks at history and says that most fires start from small evils. He remembers the group that had some problems with Uthman and told him, you've increased the fever, you've burned the Qurans, and other such nonsense. Look how it led to a great battle. Therefore, we cannot be lenient with any movement, no matter how small. Yes, we must learn. We must learn from those who, yes, this is history in the mind of every Umayyad how Uthman ibn Affan was killed in Medina. In the end, it was just a bunch of rabble who stirred up trouble. And Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah, if I were to put myself in his place now, in recent history, there was a man with a firm hand and a heavy arm, like Ubayd Ali ibn Ziyad, who knew how to dismantle something more important and powerful than the Medina uprising with his strength. That was Ubayd Ali ibn Ziyad in Kufr. Yes, he sent an army against them under the leadership of a man named Muslim ibn Akbar al-Murri, following the same pattern as Ibn Ziyad. There is even a narration that when Abdullah ibn Jafar said to him, O commander of the faithful, send me, he replied, they have no one but him. The stupidity. What does stupid mean? It means the hard, unyielding one, the one whose hand is deaf in Palestinian terms. Exactly. Yes, that's what will work after everything that happened. Okay, and then Yazid al-Mu'awiyah had a good conversation. What if they return to obedience? He said, if they return to obedience, then you have no power over them. Meaning, you will go and stay before Medina for 3 days, sending them messages and giving them 3 days. If they return to obedience, then you have no power over them, and you continue on your way, because Abdullah ibn Zubair is in Mecca, which is south of Medina. But if they do not return to obedience, then here is the second abomination that Yazid committed. Okay, so if we say that the first is that he did not punish the killers of Hussein, the second is that he said, fight them and plunder Medina for 3 days. Yes, he said, permit Medina. Yes, he said, permit it. Yes, it came from Yazid and is recorded in history books. Yes, so you can say that Yazid was not responsible for the killing of Hussein, and that this was solely the responsibility of Ubayd Ali ibn Ziyad. But his mistake, Yazid said that he didn't hold any of the slaves of God accountable, but this one. No, he ordered the city to be plundered. What does plundering the city mean? Plundering means do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. Yes, exactly. Do whatever you want. Settle, kill, embarrass, do whatever you want. Yes, it's a punishment. What does it mean when armies plunder cities? When armies plunder cities, it's when they encounter fierce resistance. So it becomes a kind of punishment for its people and a destruction of its economic capabilities, and so on. Okay. So of course, but in our Islamic history, I mean, we Muslims, we didn't do this with our enemies. I mean, we don't want to do this with them. I'm telling you, the one who's asking, it exists, right? And I'm not absolving anyone. What I'm saying is, you're like Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal when he was told, O Abu Abdullah, O Zayd ibn Mu'awiyah, he said, should we curse him? He said, Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah, how can you say that? Do we love him? He said, does a believer love Yazid? This is Ahmad ibn Hanbal. So he said to him, and what did he do? He said, what he did in the city was loot it. This is the verse, meaning this is the greatest crime according to our master, according to Imam Ahmad, that he looted the city. So he said, why don't you curse him? He said, did you ever see your father curse anyone? Of course, this is a conversation between Abdullah ibn Imam Ahmad and Imam Ahmad. So, they declared the city permissible to plunder. Yes, the Battle of Al-Harar is the biggest black mark in the era of Yazid. But here, too, the two problems we mentioned regarding the killing of Al-Hussein occurred. The first problem is that Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah tried to contain the people of Medina peacefully before and after the revolution, but he couldn't. So what can a caliph, politician, emperor, king, or president do in the face of a revolution that rejects his authority and refuses to obey him? The second problem is the exaggerations that occurred in the accounts of this battle, just like the exaggerations that happened with al-Hussein, like the exaggerations that happened in al-Harra. Reliable accounts, not just the authentic ones, but the authentic, semi-authentic, and almost authentic ones do not mention anything about the violation of women. Thank God, I read in some sources that my heart sank. Yes, some sources say that 100,000 women gave birth to children from fornication. Of course, this is if 1,000 women gave birth to children from fornication, meaning that the number of those raped is much higher than 1,000. And then there will be a generation of these children who will speak out. We don't see any of this in any earlier sources, nor in any recent sources. Closest sources are 170 years away from the event. The first to mention it was al-Madain, for example, and the first to quote it was Ibn al-Jawzi in the 5th century in a book he wrote about cursing Yazid. The accepted and semi-acceptable narrations don't mention anything about the violation of honor. As for the looting that occurred, it was the killing and the taking of money, meaning the killing and destruction. Yes, this happened for 3 days. Therefore, for example, it is said that 10,000 were killed, and it is also said that 80,000 were killed. All of this is, of course, exaggeration. The correct, or rather, the closest thing we can be certain of is the narration of Imam Malik. Imam Malik was from Medina. Of course, the Imam of Medina, that he killed 700 Arabs, and these 700, I mean, a large number compared to the people of Medina at that time. We don't want to forgive or absolve Yazid or this army of responsibility for this crime, but our hatred for Yazid or this army doesn't make us accept things about them that aren't proven, like the issue of 10,000 or 8,000, or the issue of violating sanctities. No, if one Muslim is killed, that is a grave matter in the eyes of God. Yes, without a doubt, there's no question about it. But this is the Battle of Al-Harra, which is problem number 2. Now, let's get to problem number 3, which you asked about. This army that Yazid sent. I'm sorry, I'm Muhammad, but I meant Yazid. Did he ask for someone to negotiate with the people of Medina? Did he warn them beforehand? Yes, what happened? We took and gave, we took and gave, we took and gave. There were messages and we took and gave. The man is telling you, wait, he's a Muslim, the mind of the one who is in charge. He waited 3 days and sent word to the people of Medina, saying, O commander of the faithful, he has informed me that you are his kin and that he is giving you 3 days. If you return to obedience, I will have no power over you. Then he waited 3 more days and sent word to them again, will you return to obedience or fight? They said, we will fight. So he tried. Now we have the third problem, which is Abdullah ibn al-Zubair, who was holed up in Mecca. Also, Muslim ibn Akbar, the army commander, died, and a man named Hussein ibn Numair al-Kuni took command of the army. This Muslim ibn Akbar died, and because of what he did at Al-Harra, the early Muslims called him Musrif ibn Akbar, meaning extravagant in blood. This army besieged Ibn al-Zubair in the Kharbar. We will also enter into another tragedy, which is the tragedy of what happened in the Kharbar. The most famous aspect of this tragedy, of course, is to say that the Umayyad clan was cohesive, unlike other clans. You should know that the first army to attack Abdullah ibn al-Zubair was led by his brother, Amr ibn al-Zubair. This army was defeated and Abdullah bin Zubair took his brother, arrested him, and then killed him. Yes, so I just want to tell you that the matter was not what it was. I mean, there was no cohesive and harmonious group except the group of Banu Umayyah. What happened? The siege that arose in Mecca. Here is a narration that I will mention now because I really did not research it myself, the people of this army, which is the army of Syria, which is led by Hussein bin Umair, of course. Now there is a problem that Ibn Zubair is fortified in Mecca. So now there is a revolution in Mecca. Okay, what is the problem? The problem is that Mecca is a sanctuary, a place of safety that is not permissible for anyone. But the people of the Levant believed that nor does it protect a criminal or an atheist in the sanctuary. So now what is Mecca? It is true that it is a sanctuary, but now there is an exceptional situation in it. What is in it? There is disobedience, lawlessness, and division of the community. This is how they described the matter. Abdullah ibn Zubair was fortified in Mecca, and besides his personality and those who responded to him in Mecca, anyone who went to attack Mecca would bear the sin and incur the wrath of Muslims throughout the Islamic world. This was also the kind of predicament that existed at that time. But what I wanted to say is that the narration I can't elaborate on is that it is said the Kaaba was damaged and destroyed. Okay, it was damaged and destroyed, that's established, but what caused it to be damaged? Some narrations mention that it was damaged by the catapults fired by this army, and another narration mentions that it was damaged by a flame that flew from Abdullah ibn Zubair's camp and ignited in the Kaaba. Which of these things actually happened? I don't know. A matter requires effort, and I haven't had the time to study it. Perhaps it also requires someone much more knowledgeable than me to delve into these narrations and elaborate on them. Although I have looked at those who say this, I looked into what they said, but I'm not convinced by either of them. So it caught fire. I mean, the Kaaba's covering caught fire. Yes, because back then they used to put one covering on top of another, on top of another. We haven't reached that time yet. We're still in the early days of Islam. The Kaaba wasn't it wasn't yet. The Kaaba was surrounded by a stone, not a wall. It wasn't yet covered by a wall. We hadn't yet entered the Umayyad era, where each caliph would cover it with one covering on top of the other, boasting about the covering on top of the other. So I'm telling you, I looked into both, but I don't have a bias. What I'm certain of is that no one intended to destroy the Kaaba. I mean, the army of Syria didn't intend to destroy the Kaaba. I understand that a shell might have gone astray or hit the Kaaba unintentionally, and I also understand that there might have been a fire that broke out unintentionally. But for either side to intend to destroy the Kaaba, that's something I don't believe. I imagine something unimaginable, but the surprise that happened, and this surprise is truly dangerous, is that during this siege, news came of the death of Yazid bin Mu'awiyah, and then the commander of this army, Hussein bin Nair, sent a message to Ibn al-Zubair and said to him, what? He told him, come with me to Syria so that the people there will pledge allegiance to you and the country will be handed over to you. This was a good, urgent message, but Abdullah ibn al-Zubair refused. Perhaps he feared the people of Syria, or perhaps he felt they wouldn't accept him. So the army returned before completing its mission. The army knew that Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah had died. They returned before finishing the siege of Ibn al-Zubair, and this didn't end there. But then Abdullah ibn al-Zubair declared himself caliph. Yes, and the Ansar pledged allegiance to him. The people began to pledge allegiance. The people began to pledge allegiance, and all the cities pledged allegiance to him, including Syria. Yes, including Syria, except for a small area near Jordan and Palestine, which was under the leadership of Marwan ibn al.
لكن حتى الضحاك بن قيس الفهري اللي هو كان أمويا وكان في حاشية يزيد بن معاوية، بعدما تنازل معاوية بن يزيد بن معاوية عن الخلافة، احنا قلنا بعد 40 يوم أو بعد 3 شهور، أرسل بيعته لعبد الله بن الزبير.
Hakam, but even al-Barhak ibn Qais al-Fihri, the one who was an Umayyad and was in the entourage of Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah after Mu'awiyah ibn Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah abdicated the caliphate, we said after 40 days or 3 months, sent his pledge of allegiance to Abdullah ibn al-Zubair. Yes, that's how it ended, Sheikh Murad. Yes, that's what I wanted to tell you. Tell the young men, look, we young people don't go into the details of the story because each of these aspects involves a huge number of daily and momentary details, including psychological or not. We're just clarifying and breaking this down. Now I have a small question. When Hassin went to Kufr, why didn't Abdullah ibn Zubair go with him, since he was also an opponent? Because the people of Kufr had already pledged allegiance to Hassin. Let's both make this bigger. My understanding is that Abdullah ibn Zubair saw himself as worthy of the caliphate, but he also wasn't confident about the people of Kufr. He didn't believe this attempt would succeed. He forbade Hassin from going to Kufr. Now, our master Hassin, the grandson of the Prophet, peace be upon him, God, peace be upon him, he wanted, meaning he had a desire for power, or he wanted to unite the Muslims, and we don't want to custom people to ruling without consultation. So, let me come out and sort this out and return it to what the Prophet, peace be upon him, taught us. May God bless you. Look, sir, firstly, the desire for power is not our fault, and we must prove this. If you see yourself, and a person sees himself as capable, just because he seeks power, this is not our fault. So, it's not right for someone to criticize someone because he wants power. And so, even in the Holy Quran, he said, point me over the storehouses of the land. Indeed, I am a knowing guardian. So, yes, as for Hassin, he saw himself as worthy. Yes, he saw himself as worthy, and he was worthy of it. So, the problem now is that it is certain that Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah was not the most suitable person for the caliphate in the presence of Abdullah ibn Umar and the rest of the companions, and even in the presence of Hassin and Abdullah ibn al-Zubair. Rather, the meaning is that the combined forces that carry out this matter did not. There was no group stronger in the nation than the Umayyad bloc. I mean, certainly, otherwise, we mentioned before that Al-Hassan was given the oath of allegiance as caliph in Iraq, and among the people was Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, who was better than Al-Hassan, and he was one of the 6 members of the Shura Council. The rule of the less qualified in the presence of the more qualified is permissible according to the Sunnis. So, he saw himself as worthy of the caliphate, yes, and he was indeed qualified for it, and this is not our flaw. Secondly, I cannot accuse Al-Hussein of wanting power for the sake of power itself. Rather, he must have seen this as the beginning of a deviation, and he had to confront it, and he was capable of confronting it. When he found himself unable to confront it, he offered to return, offering to go to the borders, or to return to Medina, or to be taken to Yazid. That is, our master Al-Hussein saw in himself the ability to restore the Shura, or to return it to its rightful owners, or to appoint the most qualified. When he saw in himself the inability, he withdrew from that position. So, the injustice that befell Al-Hussein was preventing him from returning, or going to Yazid, or going to the borders. The injustice done to Hassin, may God be pleased with him, is not as portrayed in sheer narratives and the fervent accounts told by those ignorant of history. He didn't go to a martyrdom battle and didn't consider returning, saying his blood would be a light for future generations. No, he didn't enter a suicidal or martyrdom battle to prove he objected to this. Rather, he offered to return, as he considered himself worthy. Therefore, Hassin's departure was justified for any righteous, good man, a man with the intellect of our master Hassin. All the elders were advising him. Messages reached him, supposedly meant to be loaded onto a camel or mule, I forget the exact wording, from Kufr, saying, come. So, I might believe him and go. But the people of Kufr abandoned him. They abandoned him because they were afraid of Ubayd al ibn Ziyad. Or perhaps it was simply their nature. They sensed they were joking. Then they took it seriously. They said, "Why did Hussein come? Let's abandon him." "What do you mean? What happened to them? What's wrong with them?" "I mean, the people of Kufr, what's their story? You always find them rebelling against the governor, rebelling against the caliph. This needs a long analysis, a long explanation. I mean, I don't want anyone to think I have a problem with the people of Iraq or the people of Kufr as a whole, but I mean, the best thing to say now is that it happens a lot in history that people rise up for something and then back down. It happens a By the way, the martyrdom of Hussein sparked another revolution, led by someone named Sulayman ibn Surad al-Qusay. They called themselves the penitents, repenting for their sin of handing Hussein over. This revolution was against the Umayyads and was suppressed. Then, after that, Muqtir ibn Ayyub al-Thaqafi marched in Kufr. Yes, and he pursued the killers of Hussein and killed them, but then he deviated and claimed to be a prophet, receiving revelation. Oh, Muqtir ibn Ayyub al-Thaqafi, yes, so it happens that emotional outbursts make people take action, then they hesitate due to the consequences, or the state's security plan becomes too big for them to imagine or comprehend. So, Professor Muhammad, after all that you've said, what should we do? Should we curse and revile Yazid, or should we remain silent, or should we pray for mercy for him? What should we do? I follow the Sunni school of thought, which is that we neither love nor revile Yazid, and we believe that God may forgive him. And if what happened to Hussein was a calamity for the Muslims, it is not greater than the calamities of Ali's death, Uthman's death, the killing of the prophets before him, or Umar's death. Yes, it is a calamity and we grieve for it, but it shouldn't fill this great void. And of course, the nation has been divided since that time, I mean, since the time of Uthman. And the martyrdom of Hussein exacerbated the division. You now have a large sect of the Muslim nation, the Shia, about 10% of Muslims. Their lives are based on Hussein, on the killing of Hussein, and on the battles of the Prophet's family. Is this one of the problems, or one of the wounds that won't heal, meaning one of the wounds that won't heal? So at least, as long as we are in a time of weakness, and in a time when their mother, the infidels, has overcome and subjugated us, these minor differences between us can ultimately be overcome, even if, practically speaking, this won't happen. I mean, if you're telling me from the position of an advisor, what should I say? I'd tell you we'll try and overcome them, we'll try. But from the position of, say, a historian, for example, or someone who it's impossible, it won't happen because it happens because the Shiites, as a consequence of the killing of Hussein, declared Mu'awiyah an infidel, Yazid an infidel, and then declared those among the companions who weren't with Ali infidel. So this incident is a burning incident, but it called for principles. So it made, of course, I am among those who believe that rapprochement between the sects is impossible because the sect and religion are not property, not a dispute. They are sacred things that no one can. So, in any case, I hope that the wise among the people at this important moment will prevent the common people and the foolish from getting involved in these matters. If you want to find something like this, my advice, in short, after all that has happened, is that we've told the story. What does our nation gain from this? We want to learn from what has happened so that we don't repeat the same mistakes. As the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, after me, you will encounter things and practices that you will find objectionable. We won't find rulers like Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali. The Prophet set a limit for rebelling against a rulers unless you witness clear disbelief for which you have proof from God. This is the most important lesson. As long as this ruler is capable of managing the affairs of the Muslim community, implementing the prescribed punishments, engaging in jihad, and fulfilling the fundamental obligations, then one should not rebel against him. Anyone who wants to rebel against this ruler must have a strong belief that they have the ability and resources to remove this unjust ruler without causing greater harm if they lack this ability, or if the ruler hasn't reached the point of being a disbeliever with clear proof from God, then the principle is to adhere to the established order, the unity of this Islamic nation, and its unity under one man. Of course, this doesn't apply to contemporary times, because what do contemporary times mean? That's another topic. We'll get to them. In the 10th axis, the days of the occupation. Yes, we're coming to this axis. Yes, that's right, contemporary history. Professor Muhammad. Answer to question 44. We're still in the 5th axis, the axis of the Umayyad state. Young people, of course. Where did we leave off? We reached Abdullah al-Zubair ibn al-Zubair, and now, God willing, we'll move on to the next question regarding what happened concerning his caliphate. Yes, my dear brothers, of course. Thank you very much, Professor Muhammad. Welcome, my brothers, wherever you are. Don't forget to share these episodes and spread the word. And if you want to learn more, you must go to books and read about what we've discussed today so you don't fall prey to the many things available on YouTube and consequently become a victim of weak narrations and so on. May you remain in God's care. Join us to watch more programs about Islamic history and learn about its events, victories, defeats, leaders, scholars, secrets, governance, politics, wars, and battles. Simply follow our YouTube channel, our history, from the furthest point in the past to the furthest point in the future. We bring history to life.